We were watching the birth of a star right before our eyes. High Power was released in 2011, the unforgettable song on Kendrick Lamar's album entitled Section 80, which was one of Kendrick's first albums released in July of 2011.
The sky's falling, the wind is calling, stand for something or die in the morning. Section 80, High Power.
2011 was an interesting year for music. The Billboard charts were being lit up by mega pop artists like Adele, Katy Perry, and Bruno Mars. It was the year that gave us Fireworks and Last Friday Night by Katy Perry, F You by CeeLo Green, and even Britney Spears. The song Grenade by Bruno Mars, which has more than 1 billion views on YouTube. While these pop songs dropped and took over the charts, that little song dropped in April 2011 called High Power.
Visions of Martin Luther staring at me. Malcolm X put a hex on my future, someone catch me.
By an up-and-coming rapper named Kendrick Lamar.
I thought of High Power. I wanted to make it where it means we stand above all the bullshit that's going on in the world. Everything that everybody's feeding us.
A song that has the least views of all of Kendrick's music, but perhaps the biggest impact on Kendrick's reputation and cultural significance in hip-hop. Many people think of ADHD as one of Kendrick's first hit singles off of the Section 80 album, which was even before Good Kid, Mad City, which it was a breakout hit. But High Power was actually Kendrick Lamar's lead single off of Section 80, which people may not know. His intro anthem to the world, the first impression Kendrick wanted to give.
So get up off that slave ship, build your own pyramids, write your own hieroglyphs.
It is a song that contains Black Power references, overall empowerment, talks about resistance, social justice, along with so many historical figures referenced. Kendrick calls it his movement and the way of life. At the time of this video, the ADHD song nears 100 million views on YouTube. And the High Power song about revolution only has about 5 million views. The diversity at such an early time in Kendrick's career shows the artist that he would become. While I can't forget what I might consider Kendrick's first major, unforgettable vocal inflection in ADHD, F dot,
Hey, doobies to the face, fuck God.
which he came back full circle to use against Drake in Euphoria when he said, "You don't know nothing about that," and the nostalgia it creates for me.
But I can see you don't know nothing about that. Waking them up, know nothing about that.
Deep down, the song High Power is the unforgettable hidden gem many people don't talk about. And the song that I just can't unhear, the song that talks about things we rarely see discussed in pop culture, power to the people and social justice for all.
And you ain't gotta tell the wise how to stay on beat because our life's an instrumental. This is physical and mental.
We usually think a rapper just gets into the studio, starts rhyming rhymes, but High Power was much bigger than that. Kendrick takes time to prepare his music. He drops albums infrequently and with a lot of effort and high quality. Even with his rap beef against Drake of recent, Kendrick was silent for some time. He took a few weeks to prepare where people didn't think he was going to drop, and then dropped some of the most notable comeback disses in hip-hop history.
Drake just dropped on YouTube, and you're telling me that Kendrick dropped again?
No, he didn't. Meet the Graham, 6 minutes. What the
And right before Kendrick responded, we saw some misunderstandings happen with J. Cole when he entered the rap beef with Kendrick, but he quickly bowed out with an apology.
You know what I mean? I pray that my nigga really didn't feel no way, and if he did, my nigga, I got my chin out. Take your best shot, I'm gonna take that shit on the chin, boy. Do what you do. Let's say right now tonight, how many people think Kendrick Lamar is one of the greatest motherfuckers to ever touch a microphone?
When you look back, you have to understand why Cole did that, because him and Kendrick do have history. As not only was J. Cole the person who introduced Kendrick Lamar to Dr. Dre.
J. Cole, did you tell Dr. Dre about Kendrick?
J. Cole was actually the producer of the song High Power, making several mixes for Kendrick to work with.
Well, the first time I met with Kendrick on some, not met him, but the first time we got up on some music shit, I was just so excited about the nigga. I gave him some of my, I gave him beats or whatever. High Power was one of them. What a fucking song. High Power was one of them, which he killed and destroyed.
His production is crazy, man. I mean, the first time we locked in, he played about 10 beats, man. I wanted 11 of them.
This is what makes Kendrick very special, because usually when someone gives you so much, you're like, wow, you gave me all this? But Kendrick jokingly says, I wanted one more. Prior to releasing High Power, Kendrick was still known as an up-and-coming rapper. He dropped a full-length album independently that didn't get a ton of attention, but it garnered enough attention to get him on the 2011 XXL freshman list the following year. And this is when XXL was an actual magazine. He made it front and center of the magazine, wearing a black sweatshirt that read Compton with the other up-and-comers at the time, YG, Mac Miller, Meek Mill, and others. You know, the internet magic wasn't even as prominent as it was in 2011. And the Freshman Cypher, actually, that they did aired on YouTube in 2013, showing Kendrick with a gas flow. And this is the Kendrick we all came to wait on.
I find it funny that you embracing the storm. Wake up, ring the alarm, or wake up with a bomb through you. It's bad dad kids with bad dads, cops with bad badges, big bullets, know my bads. Once them guns shoot you.
Then suddenly in April of 2011, Kendrick teases a promo video for the lead single High Power, which showed a fictional portrayal of a serious Kendrick pouring gasoline all over his body, sparking a match to light himself on fire, symbolizing life's turmoil and pain, as well as a symbol of his music to the world, as if it is sparking a flame inside of everyone. This also coincides with Kendrick's affinity to Tupac.
I'm not saying I'm going to rule the world or I'm going to change the world, but I guarantee that I will spark the brain that will change the world. And that's our job, is to spark somebody else watching us.
Then on May 28, 2011, the High Power full music video drops. The music video is filled with clips of global protests intertwined with shots of Kendrick in a serious posture, rapping the lyrics, listeners waving three fingers in the air, and ends with a dramatization of what was seen in the music video preview, Kendrick dousing himself with gasoline and lighting a match on fire. And 2011, by the way, it was the year of the Egyptian Revolution in January of that year, where much of the protests and conflicts between the people and the government were televised through social media for everyone to see. And this song, High Power, dropped shortly after the Egyptian Revolution started. Some of the visuals in the video include the Black Panther Party, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey, Obama, Osama bin Laden, the film director Orson Welles, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Tupac, Ronald Reagan, protest footage from across the world, and more. He once sang the song in a small reception for a studio.
Hey, not everybody. It's okay. You can do it. Hey, hey, when I say hi, you say power. Hi, hi. And she always told me pray for the weak. Them demons got me. I ain't prayed in some weeks.
But later on, it went to be an in-demand song by fans in concerts, and even when he was brought out by J. Cole.
I don't know what you want to do, what you got in the stash. Just some shit that the real fucking fans of this nigga K-Dot is gonna know. Can you do one of those? One of those? One of those. Give me some.
Everybody put three fingers in the air. The sky's falling, the wind is calling, stand for something or die in the morning. Section 80, High Power.
Hey, now put high. Y'all say power. High. High. Hey, look, visions of Martin Luther staring at me.
Before we dig into some of the lyrics and the many historical references in the song, let's pause to talk about the three fingers. The song High Power is purposely spelled with three eyes, for which Kendrick also has fans hold up three fingers to represent the song's purpose in the music video, and even at concerts. Kendrick says High Power is more of a movement and a way of life, where the three eyes and three fingers represent heart, honor, respect, as codes to live by.
Really a big movement that we got in LA that's spreading like wildfire. Now, High Power, the three eyes represents heart, honor, respect. That's how we carry ourselves in the streets. To the simplest form, it represents just being above all the madness, above all the bullshit. No matter what the world is going through, you always going to keep yourself dignity and carry yourself with this manner that it don't faze you.
The intro of the music video explains that Kendrick got a vision of Tupac one day saying to him, quote unquote, don't let me die because you the ... And it stops there, hinting that Tupac was saying to him something like, you have to keep going because you'll be the world's savior.
Well, I was asleep one night, man, and his blur like a silhouette, and he basically said, keep doing what you're doing, don't let my music die.
As Kendrick shows this letter on the screen, he has a quick flash of one of Malcolm X's famous photos pointing his finger. But the photo shown in the video of Malcolm X, it looks like it's photoshopped and altered to make it as if Malcolm X is holding up the three fingers to represent Kendrick's high power ideology. I thought that was kind of interesting. I couldn't find any authentic photo online of Malcolm X holding three fingers. So if photoshopped, I believe this was done to draw parallels between the past civil rights issues that Malcolm X fought for and the present day struggles. When this beat drops, you already know something's gonna happen. It's a fire beat. J. Cole did an amazing job bringing this beat to life, along with Kendrick, who had the right intuition to decide on the right final rendition. People aren't fully clear on what is being sampled in this beat. Some say the sample is from a project called 6-2 Duration Part 9. A project by a retired Canadian underground DJ, Vaughn Robert Squire, along with another drum sample from a song called So Appalled in 2010 by Kanye West.
We above the law, we don't give a fuck about y'all. I got dogs that'll chew a fucking.
As for the main sample of the song, some say even the 6-2 beat is a sample of an older song from 1969 where the flute is the main instrument called Hang On to a Dream by Jeremy Steig. So, without further ado, let's get into the lyrics. The sky is falling, the wind is calling, stand for something or die in the morning. Section 80, high power. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "A man who won't die for something is not fit to live."
But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Malcolm X also said, "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything."
And they feel that someday the Negro is going to wake up and try and do unto them as they have done do unto the whites as the whites have done unto us.
So this seems to be a twist on both those lines, especially because he mentions MLK and Malcolm X in the next lines. That if you don't have anything to believe in or stand on, then you'll not be worthy to live the next day. Kendrick also adds what is known as a homophone in literature, words that sound the same but have different meanings. Mourning or mourning. If you don't stand for something, you'll go out in sadness, like the morning and mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. Then we get what I think is one of the best first lines to a rap song. Visions of Martin Luther King staring at me. Malcolm X put a hex on my future, someone catch me. There's a lot of interesting twists on this line. The first thing we hear in this lyrics is visions of Martin Luther King. So we see visions of Martin Luther King, the man, but then also visions, in other words, the ideologies of Martin Luther King, right? So we're looking at MLK and his ideas. But then he makes it even more interesting by saying visions of Martin Luther King staring at me, not that I'm looking at the visions. In other words, being embroidered in MLK's ideas, that they're encroaching, they're on top of you, and thoughts, and that these ideas are placed on my fate, whether I want them or not. I'm made to stand on them. What are the teachings of MLK? MLK fought obviously for black rights in America. I give so much credit to these civil rights leaders because they paved the way for black Americans, but also paved the way for all people of color in America.
Our little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
Now to this point, it's interesting because in Kendrick's video, most of what I saw, the people holding three fingers in his music video are white fans. So it's kind of interesting how it coincides with MLK's speech. Now, going back to Kendrick's line when he says visions of Martin Luther King staring at me, it can also mean visions of how MLK died are in my head and how he was taken out for standing on his beliefs. MLK was assassinated on a hotel balcony in April 1968.
Good evening. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, 39 years old and a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and the leader of the nonviolent civil rights movement in the United States, was assassinated in Memphis tonight.
But then there's an interesting further twist when he says Malcolm X put a hex on my future. So he interestingly sets Malcolm X side by side with MLK. And MLK was known for the nonviolent civil rights movement, but Malcolm X was more known for what he said: we believe in a fair exchange, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a head for a head, and a life for a life.
And bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.
I love how he says Malcolm X put a hex on my future. It's like when you are in love with something, with someone or an idea, and you really can't control yourself. You don't necessarily know why, but that you just are.
And I think every oppressed people, no matter how meek and humble they are, after you drive them so far, they're going to strike back.
And here he's saying he put a hex on my future. And a hex is a word for a magical spell, a bewitching, sometimes known as a curse. So it's a super interesting choice of words. I don't think he means hex is a bad thing, but that he's saying I'm embodied by these figures and their teachings. No matter what, I can't and won't escape it. And maybe it does lead down a dark and tough road. So putting these two great historical figures together is a great way to capture the movement in all ways. MLK nonviolent movement and Malcolm X do unto you. Next line. I'm falling victim to a revolutionary song. The Serengetti's clone. back to put you backstabbers back on your spinal bone. The revolutionary song is High Power, and Kendrick is caught up in its aura. When I heard Serengetti's clone, I wondered, what is Serengeti? Serengeti is a large, sometimes described as endless plains in Africa, specifically the country Tanzania. It's described as the last true natural wonders on planet Earth. It's known for the Great Migration, where each year hundreds of thousands of animals have known to cross in search for sustenance, and they fall prey to many predators. Kendrick is comparing his song and himself to the Serengeti Plains. And the part I like is that Serengeti is beautiful, but it's also known for its treacherous difficulties. So it's like the ideas in the song. They're beautiful and lofty, but they're difficult to follow and implement. Back to put you backstabbers back on your spinal bone. You slip your disc when I slip you my disc. You wanted to diss, but jumped on my dick. I love this line. I always loved how it sounded. And for a long time when I heard, it was like, what is he saying? But I kind of liked it without like not knowing what he was saying because of just the love for how it sounds. And in poetry, it can be described as having consonance and alliteration, the repetition of the same sounding letters and words. It really does create a harsh, rhythmic, and aggressive tone to the song. That line at the end, he's saying you wanted to hate me when I gave you my music. You wanted to say I was trash, but eventually you liked me. I always wondered here if Kendrick had anything specific in mind. But this also goes to show that you should never back down to what you want to achieve because people will always try to hate. But the more you continue, eventually they may like your resilience. And again, interesting play on the word disc from the spinal disc and the CD-ROM, the old disc that we don't see today, but they're damn nostalgic. Next line. I got my finger on the mother effing pistol, aiming at a pig. Charlotte's Web is gonna miss you. Ooh, this line. I always heard the phrase Charlotte's Web, and there have been books and movies about Charlotte's Web. So here Kendrick is aiming a pistol at a pig, which is also another derogatory word to describe a cop. The word pig has always been an insult since the 1800s as someone greedy and nasty. I suppose, for how pigs roll around in mud, right? But it was used against cops in the 1960s in America throughout the Black Civil Rights Movement as a word to describe the hatred towards oppressive authority. This word was actually first coined by an artist, Emory Douglas, through his political cartoons that he created for the Black Panther Party newspapers in the 60s. He was a member of the Black Panther Party and often represented Black American oppression through his artwork.
Huey said, we're going to start the newspaper. We want you to be the revolutionary artist. My mom thought I was crazy. They took out an insurance policy on me because they didn't think I was going to survive. The initial idea was to inform and to enlighten and to educate people about the basic issues in the community and to tell our story from our own perspective.
He was the first person to portray cops as pigs in his artwork.
Huey wanted me to draw this pig. And on this pig, we were going to put this badge number. It came to me, why don't I put the belt around it? Stand it up on the two hoofs. And it took on a life of its own. It transcended the Black Panther Party and the African American community. And that became the symbol of those who were abusing their power.
Then let's get to the Charlotte's Web reference. Charlotte's Web is a novel published in 1952. It's like a children's story. It's a story of a farm pig named Wilbur who finds out he's going to be slaughtered for food. And throughout the story, a spider named Charlotte tries to protect the pig by spinning a web resembling different words around him in the barn, which makes people see Wilbur as more of a special sort of pig. In essence, Charlotte's Web is meant to protect Wilbur the pig. And that's Kendrick's wordplay. Here, when he references pointing a gun at a cop, in other words, a pig, but saying Charlotte's Web won't be able to protect you, pig, right? Because in the book, Charlotte's Web, the web protects the pig. And in here, he's saying the pig is the cop. Charlotte's Web is not going to protect you. Next line. Grown men never should bite their tongue unless you're eating pussy that smell like it's a stale plum. Biting your tongue is an interesting phrase, which means to hold back from speaking. You want to say something, but you don't. It's often meant to hold back from saying something inappropriate or causing an argument or conflict. This phrase dates back to Shakespeare in his play, Henry VI, where he says, ready to starve and dares not touch his own. So York must sit and fret and bite his tongue while his own lands are bargained for and sold.
No. Rather let my head stoop to the block than these knees bow to any, save to the God in heaven and to my king. Hey, get away, let him talk some more.
A lot of people have thoughts and ideas, but they often hide those ideas for fear of being criticized or shamed. But here Kendrick is saying a sign of a mature man is that men should always speak the truth, even if it may hurt others or themselves. Next line. This is physical and mental. I won't sugarcoat it. You'll die from diabetes if these other dudes wrote it. Everything Kendrick is talking about in this song is deep, and he won't make it sound nice by sugarcoating, right? Then I like the way he described how other rappers would describe things, that they wouldn't do it as raw as he would. Diabetes is a disease that comes from the body's inability to regulate blood sugar in the body.
So what we end up is this fructose overload in the liver. It needs to start storing it as fat. Liver fat decreases insulin's ability to do its job. That increases our risk of diabetes.
So Kendrick is saying all these other rappers are superficial. Like, it's just sugar, right? But it's not true sustenance. And then he compares that to a listener dying of diabetes because they have too much sugar in their listening ears. They don't have quality. They have nonsense. And this aged really well because during the beef with Drake, a lot of people describe Drake as the McDonald's of rap, who tried to take on Kendrick during the rap beef. And that Drake drops music that sounds good, but it's lacking depth. Unlike Kendrick's music that has clear depth. Number 8. And everything on TV is just a figment of imagination. I don't want a plastic nation, dread that like a Haitian. In the hit song Humble by Kendrick, he says, I'm so sick and tired of the Photoshop. Show me something natural like Afro on Richer Pride. Show me something natural. I want to feel some stretch marks. Still, I take you down right on your mama couch in polo stuff. Kendrick talks about wanting something real, not fake, like plastic. I love how he says everything on TV is just a figment of imagination because most things we see in pop culture and social media is artificial and fake. This line reminds me of two things: The Matrix, the movie, and a really old story I read in school called The Allegory of the Cave by Plato. So let's talk about The Matrix real briefly. In the timeless classic movie, The Matrix, released in 1999, which I can't imagine there's anybody listening who hasn't seen this movie, and if you haven't, you got to. The main character, Neo, discovers that he's living in a video game-like simulation called The Matrix, and that there's a real world somewhere with all the truth that he knows nothing about. For the rest of the movie, he has to find this real world and become awakened. And once he does, a drama ensues as the agents of the Matrix try to stop him. And this is what I'm reminded of when Kendrick says, everything you see is a figment of imagination. There's really some other truth to it. And that's crazy. This song was even before all the social media, which made things much worse. In 2011, we didn't have stuff that we have today. Now, for the Allegory of the Cave, it's a story by an ancient philosopher, Plato. He describes a story where chained prisoners are made to sit in a cave facing a blank wall. The wall shows shadows which are being cast behind them by puppeteers controlling what they see, perceiving it as reality. And one prisoner is freed from the cave and he goes outside to see the sunlight and he becomes enlightened. But when he comes back to free the other prisoners ridicule and resist him as they prefer the shadows on the wall instead.
For Plato, we are all for much of our lives in shadow. Many of the things we get excited about, like fame, the perfect partner, a high-status job, are infinitely less real than we suppose. They are, for the most part, phantoms projected by our culture onto the walls of our fragile and flawed minds. But because everyone around us is insisting that they are genuine, we are taken in from a young age.
At the end of the music video for High Power, interestingly, Kendrick shows two kids sitting in an empty room watching a small television. Then that TV is just showing some static. And right after it fades from Kendrick rapping High Power, which this resembles that Kendrick song is like Truth, but it's hidden behind the television static. The kids are watching. And the static in the TV most likely represents all the shallow content we have around us. This concept shown at the end of the music video are perfect metaphors for the Matrix and the Allegory of the Cave. Next line. I be off the slave ship, building pyramids, writing my own hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphics are an ancient writing system used by ancient Egyptians, which had a combination of graphical and alphabet elements, often carved in stone. It is one of the earliest forms of written communication and had more than 1,000 symbols. The meaning behind ancient hieroglyphics was discovered through an ancient Egyptian artifact discovered in the 1700s called the Rosetta Stone. That's because the content of the Rosetta Stone had the same thing written in hieroglyphics, but had it in two other languages. Because they knew the other languages, they could compare and make some sense of what some of the hieroglyphics meant. Hieroglyphics died off when Egypt was conquered by the Greeks, and there is a historical argument regarding the race of Egyptians, whether they were black or Mediterranean whites. This has been argued a lot, especially because Egypt has always been cosmopolitan with invasions from foreign countries. But someone known by Sheikh Anta Diop was the biggest proponent and most notable Afrocentric historian to conclude that Egyptians are black and not of European mix. He emphasized the importance of acknowledging Egypt as an integral part of African history.
They are the closest group to Egyptians. And this, contrary to whatever Metatron said, is the evidence that Egyptians said that they identified as black people. They didn't have to say it. They did better. They depicted it inside royal and high officials' tombs, and we all know that an image is worth 1,000 words.
Examining Shammai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
So here Kendrick is saying, I'm away from the slave ships. We're building like the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids and making our own language, creating our own power. Next line, number 10. 5-star dishes, food for thought, bitches. I mean, this shit is Huey Newton going stupid. You can't resist his high power. I love this line, 5-star dishes, food for thought. The combination of a meal that is considered 5 stars, but then using the phrase food for thought, which means something provocative, something to think about. A phrase that also includes the word food, which ties back into 5-star dishes. Yo, I just love this. Huey Newton was the black revolutionary founder of the Black Panther Party in Oakland, California in 1966, a year after the assassination of the great Malcolm X. So Black Panther Party was founded by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, and one of its leaders was Fred Hampton from Chicago. All three are mentioned in the song, with each person being mentioned once in each of the 3 choruses. Chorus 1, Kendrick says, Huey Newton going stupid, you can't resist this, high power. And then the next chorus, he says, Bobby Seale making meals, you can't resist this, high power. And the third and last chorus, Fred Hampton on your campus, you can't resist this, high power, mentioning all 3 members of the Black Panther Party. According to archive.org, Huey Newton graduated high school without knowing how to read and write, but then taught himself how to read on his own and received a bachelor's degree and PhD. The Black Panther Party was inspired by the teachings of Malcolm X that physical self-defense can be necessary in the advancement of equal rights. According to Britannica, the Black Panther Party started as a way to patrol black neighborhoods, protecting people from police brutality.
In October 1966, Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, a pair of students in Oakland, galvanized by Malcolm X's philosophy of black self-determination, launched the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Their goal was to protect their community from racism and violence, which meant protecting it from the police.
When we first started, we had a police alert patrol, and we would patrol the community. If we saw the police brutalizing anyone, we put an end to this. Usually the police wouldn't brutalize anyone if we were on hand.
And the Black Panther Party also had a 10-point program of beliefs.
You say we want freedom, we want power to determine the destiny of our black community, full employment for our people. Number 3, we want housing fit, decent housing fit for shelter of human beings. Number 4, we want all black men to be exempt from military service. Number 5.
Huey Newton was accused of murdering a police officer, but he was acquitted by a hung jury. And they tried to accuse him of embezzling funds. It seems like they were kind of constantly trying to tag him for something, Huey Newton.
Newton spent a lot of time in jail. To the police, he was a dangerous thug. In 1967, he was convicted of killing an Oakland police officer, but 2 retrials later ended with hung juries. In 1974, he fled to Cuba to escape prosecution for killing a prostitute. Then last March, he was accused of embezzling state funds. Today, Charles Gary insists Newton was a victim, not a villain.
The FBI killed him. When I say killed him, I don't mean to put a gun to his head. They destroyed him as a person.
Bobby Seale, the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, said, quote unquote, we don't hate nobody because of color. We hate oppression. The FBI then declared the Black Panther Party a communist organization and an enemy to the US and vowed to dismantle it. This resulted in a 5-hour police shootout at the headquarters in California and a police raid in Chicago where police officers killed the leader, Fred Hampton. And it's been reported that Fred Hampton was killed by police officers breaking his door down and firing over 90 shots into the apartment where they killed Hampton and laying in his own bed with his pregnant fiance at the time.
December 4th, 1969. Akua Njeri was 19 years old and sleeping next to her fiance, the Illinois Black Panther Party chairman, Fred Hampton.
The next thing I remember was someone in our room shaking Chairman Fred. Chairman, wake up, wake up. Plaster was flying off the wall. You could smell the cordite from the gunshot. If you've ever been under gunfire, 5 minutes is 5 hours. To you, it seems like forever. The shooting started back again. Then another voice unfamiliar to me said, "He's good and dead now." I knew they were talking about Chairman Fred.
Fred Hampton was murdered by his government.
And there's some documentaries you can see about those, and I urge you to watch those. Next line. In the video, there's like a little break where you see this white man and he's talking about a gangster. And in this part of the music video, there's a short clip. It's cut from a talk that seems somewhat ambiguous. I wanted to go over this.
He is a sort of gangster, you know, because this is a gangster story, but a gangster with a difference because this is a gangster with a conscience.
The full interview is not found anywhere online. As far, you know, if you find it, send it to me. But based on the looks and the voice, it definitely appears to be an old film director named Orson Welles, well-known director. He directed an old classic that is considered to be one of the most influential movies, called Citizen Kane, because of the cinematography and storytelling structure.
The one generalization which is true about America is that everything is true about it. Yeah. It's impossible to say anything that isn't true, good or bad. Our enemies are right, our friends are right. Yeah. It's an awful big country, an awful lot of different kinds of people in it, and violence always has been part of our story. It is, you know, I've seen it. That's the way we won the country and stole it away from the Indians and all the rest of it.
Now, with my research, it isn't clear which movie or character Orson Welles is referring to. Either way, it doesn't really matter. I think it seems Kendrick used this clip to reflect what he often reflects on his albums, like in Good Kid, Mad City, someone who's faced with the harsh realities of life, but has to react to survive no matter what. But he also has regrets over the consequences of their actions, right? A gangster, but a gangster with a conscience. Next line. Visions of Martin Luther staring at me. If I see it how he's seeing it, that would make my parents happy. Sorry, mama, I can't turn the other cheek. Again, Kendrick repeats the visions of Martin Luther King, but this time it seems that he's using MLK as a counter example of what he's now following. Martin Luther King Jr. once said to marchers headed to Montgomery, Alabama to protest the right to vote, quote unquote, if you are beaten tomorrow, you must turn the other cheek. The day after, the marchers were beaten with clubs and sprayed with tear gas by police, which became known as Bloody Sunday, due to the violence against the marchers.
CBS interrupted the showing of Judgment at Nuremberg on that Sunday night to show those peaceful protesters being beaten on that bridge.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
It woke up many parts of America that had turned away from fully understanding what the fight for equal rights was really all about.
Martin Luther King was known for his nonviolent civil rights movement. And Kendrick is saying, if I have to go this route, I'd make my mama proud. But then says, sorry, mama, I can't turn the other cheek. I'm not sure I can follow those steps and let our rights be trampled on and still be peaceful.
And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel, and how fed up we are without that old compromising sweet talk. Stop sweet talking it. Tell him how you feel.
And you know, I was always amazed by all the footage I saw of everything in the civil rights movement.
I come to say to you this afternoon, however difficult the moment, yes, sir, however frustrating the hour, it will not be long, no, because truth crushed to earth will rise again. Yes, sir. How long? Not long. Yes, sir. Because no lie can live forever. Yes.
And seeing MLK, a lot of people portray Martin Luther King as only being this quote unquote peaceful or nonviolent. And he was, but if you see the footage of what he had to go through, it's unbelievable. And you got to give, as any person of color in the US, you have to give tremendous amount of credit and you know, I don't know what else to the civil rights leaders because they paved the way. I don't think anyone today can do what these people did. Number 13, next line. You want to knock me off the edge like an effing widow's peak. I like this line because the widow's peak, I was like kind of confused. Like, what's that? Funny because I actually think I have a widow's peak. But a widow's peak is a V-shaped point at the center of the hairline of the head. It's a very common, like, for both men and women, right? So many people want to cut it off to keep the hairline straight.
How to line up a widow's peak without a pushback. Start in the middle where the widow peak grows.
It was called a widow's peak based on an old European tradition where a widow would wear a pointed hoodie while mourning the loss of her husband. So here Kendrick is making a simile, saying just like you cut off a widow's peak off the hairline edge, they want to get at us in the same way. And that line was very on point because it describes a way the powers that be want to keep everyone in line, how they want them to act. And anyone showing any opposition, they want to cut them off. Next line. Trying to be an effing legend, the man of mankind. Who said a black man in the Illuminati? Last time I checked, that was the biggest racist party. I love this line because every time someone holds a strange sign up showing their eye, there are a ton of videos immediately all speculating that the person is part of the Illuminati. Even a black person, person of color, whoever. And I think here Kendrick is saying, talking about Jay-Z, I think, because there was a lot of speculation about Jay-Z being in the Illuminati because of holding up a triangular symbol with his hands and Freemasonry symbols in their music videos. But it seems Jay-Z did a lot of this for artistic expression only. Also, it turns out that he used to make the triangle symbols just to represent going diamond in music.
When we first started, we had a group called Christian. When you sell 10 million, you go diamond.
Okay.
Right? We believed in them so heavy. It was like, this group is gonna sell 10 million records. So we start putting the diamond up for Christian. That's how it all came about. And then we start playing with it. And then you start doing it at shows. Then the whole crowd started doing it and just stuff.
And here Kendrick is saying, make it make sense. Like, don't keep attributing our leaders to being Illuminati. With this line, I don't think he's saying no person of color can be an Illuminati, but he wants people to think like this Illuminati thing isn't some cool, mysterious thing when you research. So stop making it like Jay-Z or these other rappers are in it for some cool factor, because as he describes it, it isn't. Next line. Every day we fight the system just to make our way. We've been down for too long, but that's all right. We fight to protect our rights and make our path because it's been too much time spent down. The beautiful background vocals were sung by Alori Joh. I hope I'm not saying it wrong because I wasn't privy to her. It could be Alori Joh. She was Ab-Soul's girlfriend, who unfortunately took her life the following year in 2012. I was like blown away when I was doing my research that that's what happened to her. This drops. And then 2012, when, Kendrick was on his run with Good Kid, Mad City, and then Ab-Soul being his best friend, and she's the girlfriend, and she takes her life. It's really sad. There's actually a really interesting documentary just about her that's really well done. You can check out on YouTube. Next line. No conspiracy, my fate is inevitable. They played musical chairs once I'm on that pedestal. Frightening, so effing frightening, enough to drive a man insane, a woman insane. I love the way he says frightening here. And these lines struck me because while I can't say for sure, but it reminds me of the tragic assassination of Malcolm X that was depicted in the movie X, directed by Spike Lee, where Malcolm X was played by Denzel Washington. It seemed that Malcolm X had a feeling regarding his fate in the last days. That's how it was depicted. In the movie, they show how despite that, he said he didn't want the people attending the speech in the Audubon Ballroom to be searched so that people could feel comfortable, even though they were telling him like something's not right. What if something happens to you? He said, no, just don't forget it. Just leave people alone. And when he got on the pedestal to give the talk, the men that assassinated him created a diversion by standing up and yelling at someone else. When Malcolm X tried to calm the situation down, it was like a distraction. Other men came around to do the shooting. So that's why I connected that to that line. I think X was an amazing movie, and Denzel Washington did an amazing job with that role. So check that out. Next line. Enough to drive a man insane, a woman insane. The reason Lauryn Hill don't sing, or Cobain loaded that clip and then said bang. But in these lines, Kendrick suggests that there are some hidden forces that affects our lives, and specifically references how hidden powers drove someone of these artists off the edge, like Lauryn Hill, a prominent rap R&B artist from the 90s, and Kurt Cobain, who was a lead singer of a rock group called Nirvana in the 90s, as well as who was known to have taken his life. So why did Lauryn Hill stop singing, right? What was going on with her? In 2012, when Lauryn Hill was being accused of tax evasion, she wrote a letter discussing some of the evils of the music industry. So this is what she said. I entered into my craft full of optimism, which I still possess, but immediately saw the suppressive force with which the system attempts to maintain its control over a given paradigm. I've seen people promote addiction, use sabotage, blacklisting, media bullying, and any other coercion technique they could to prevent artists from knowing their true value or exercising their full power. So I left a more mainstream and public life in order to wean both myself and my family away from a lifestyle that required distortion and compromise as a means for maintaining it. Like, it's super beautiful, like what she's saying here. Unfortunately, Lauryn Hill was jailed for 3 months for tax evasion around that time. And in June of 2013, Lauryn Hill wrote another open letter to the public revealing some of her thoughts. And the letter calls out the hypocrisy of expecting reparations for institutions like the IRS while ignoring the lack of reparations or acknowledgement for the centuries of harm done to Black people. So she says, who has made Black people whole? Who has made recompense for stealing, imposing, lying, murdering, criminalizing the traumatized? So the letter suggests that the continued control, manipulation, and psychological torment of Black people are like invisible fences that maintain systemic inequities. Now, for Kurt Cobain, he also left a note before passing describing his feelings. Kurt Cobain's suicide note reveals his deep struggles with depression, guilt, and disconnection from the joy he once found in music and life. He expresses feeling like emasculated infantile complainee who can no longer experience the excitement and passion that initially drove him. So you can read the note. It talks about these things. So Cobain feels like he's faking it on stage, unable to genuinely enjoy performing, which he describes as his worst fear, deceiving his fans and himself. So just really interesting how Kendrick wove, these two characters, but also the way he used the line, like, it was really interesting. Man insane, woman insane, Lauryn Hill don't sing, or Kurt Cobain loaded that clip and then said bang. So many words that he put together that just sound connected. It's just so well done. Next line, thug life. Thug life. Interesting that Kendrick ends the song by saying thug life twice, which was the late rapper Tupac's moniker, a phrase he often used that didn't necessarily mean being a thug in the negative sense of the word.
I say, I live the thug life, baby, I'm hopeless. One person might hear that and just like the way it sounds, you know what I'm saying? But I'm doing it for the kid that really lives a thug life and feels like it's hopeless. So when I say hopeless, and when I say when I say it like that, it's like I reach him.
He used it sort of like how Kendrick uses the phrase high power here, more of a philosophy. So Tupac, he describes thug life as a code of ethics for survival under oppressive conditions. He famously developed the Thug Life acronym
UGLIFE. The hate you gave little infants, UCK, everybody. Meaning, what you feed us as seeds grows and blows up in your face.
Suggesting that societal neglect and hatred towards the youth ultimately come back to harm society as a whole.